Now back to the proper events and away from the perverse and the normie tube drama. Though, unfortunately, I may have to return to the former in more ways than one in the near future. Nonetheless, this story comes fresh from the intersectional hellhole that is United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So a woman by the name of Kate Scottow, 38, posted on Mumsnet that she had recently been arrested by the British Hertfordshire police for a Twitter row she had with a trans activist. More on that person later. The post was deleted and the story has since made headline news across the country and even the world. So let's take a look at the Daily Mail article that really broke this story. A mother was arrested in front of her children and locked up for 7 hours after referring to a transgender woman as a man online. 3 officers detained Kate Scottow at her home before quizzing her at a police station about an argument with an activist on Twitter over so-called dead naming. The 38-year-old from Hitchin, Hertfordshire, had her photograph, DNA and fingerprints taken and remains under investigation. More than 2 months after her arrest on December 1st, she has had neither her mobile phone or her laptop returned, which she says is hampering her studies for a master's in forensic psychology. Miss Scottow was arrested in front of her own children, one of whom, it is later said in the article, is a 10-year-old autistic girl. She was quizzed and kept for 7 hours and had her photograph, DNA and fingerprints taken whilst remaining under investigation and has yet to have her property returned 2 months after she was originally arrested. I know the police have a very difficult job, but somebody having an online fight with somebody else does not in any way warrant this type of response. You would have thought by the Hertfordshire police's response that she was some kind of violent criminal, not a normal person having an argument online. It seems like every time I have to bring up the immortal words of Tyler the Creator to write home to these people just how petty and ridiculous this censoring and policing of the internet is over feels. Not only that, it seems the police want to take their bloody time in determining if she actually broke the law, affecting her studies. But don't worry, there's more. Writing on online forum Mumsnet, Mrs. Scottow, who has been served with a court order that bans her from referring to her accuser as a man, claimed, "I was arrested in my home by 3 officers with my autistic 10-year-old daughter and breastfed 20-month-old son present. I was then detained for 7 hours in a cell with no sanitary products, which I said I needed, before being interviewed, then later released under investigation. I was arrested for harassment and malicious communications because I called someone out and misgendered them on Twitter." So not only was she held for 7 hours, she was held without any access to sanitary products, which apparently she needed. Whether or not she asked, she does not say, but implies. I have no idea if the police are obliged to give people things like this when they detain them. I think just to make a wild guess that perhaps for humanitarian reasons they should do so. You wouldn't let a man with asthma be detained without an inhaler. And as mentioned before, she was arrested in front of her children. One is very young and the other is autistic. I cannot imagine how they must have felt to see the police do that to their mother. I know the police again have a job to do. Was there not another way? And the crime? Misgendering and malicious communications. So not only is misgendering now considered something worthy of police action, but increasingly this malicious communication is being used and abused by the police to shut down ideological enemies. It's such a vague term, and in fact the way they police the law, where it is all about the perception of the person at the receiving end, is also something that needs looking into. It is such an easy law to abuse and arrest anyone under. It is literally an authoritarian's wet dream. Confirming the arrest, Hertfordshire police said, "We take all reports of malicious communication seriously. The case is the latest where police have been accused of being heavy-handed in dealing with people who go online to debate gender issues." Sitcom writer Graham Linehan was given a verbal harassment warning by West Yorkshire police after transgender activist Stephanie Hayden reported him for referring to her by previous names and pronouns on Twitter. They take these so seriously that they have arrested over 3,000 people already under this act. Not only that, they've become heavy-handed, and it is pretty clear that the police consider this to be more worth their time than dealing with violent crime and rape gangs, because problematic to deal with those crimes because of who are committing them. Far better for them to police our minds than to police actual criminals. It's complete ass backwards policing. Oh, and yeah, this is the same activist that reported Graham Linehan. Linehan is lucky that he has a celebrity pass and was probably treated much better in his interview and was handed a verbal warning. Scottow could face actual jail time for an activist's feelings being hurt. Or is it? I have been thinking about this, Stephanie Hayden, and it would not surprise me that they're going around finding people on Twitter to report or instigating these arguments to get a reaction so they can report said people. Remember, this law is not objective, it's subjective, and these activists know this because they were the ones that implemented it through their lackeys in the government. It is a weapon designed to destroy dissent.
Really makes you think.
It was complaints by Miss Hayden that led both to the arrest of and injunction against Mrs. Scottow. High Court papers obtained by the Mail on Sunday detail how Mrs. Scottow is accused of a campaign of targeted harassment against Miss Hayden, allegedly motivated by her status as a transgender woman. The papers claim that as a toxic debate raged online over plans to allow people to self-ID as another gender, Mrs. Scottow tweeted defamatory statements about Miss Hayden. She is also alleged to have used accounts in 2 names to harass, defame and publish derogatory and defamatory tweets about Miss Hayden, including referring to her as male, stating she was racist, xenophobic, and a crook, and mocking her as a fake lawyer. Mrs. Scottow denied harassing or defaming Miss Hayden and said she holds a genuine and reasonable belief that a human cannot, practically speaking, change sex. But Deputy Judge Jason Koppel, QC, issued an interim injunction that bans her from posting any information about Miss Hayden on social media, referencing her as a man or linking her to her former male identity. Mrs. Scottow last night declined to comment. End of article. This is the truly Orwellian part of it all. An actual deputy judge has issued an injunction banning her from speaking her own mind about another person's gender. I'm sorry, but I'm all for equal rights. I truly am. And you can sigh and tut at this and scoff, but I actually do have transgender friends who I care about a lot. To the point I was worried they would die on the operating table. But I cannot accept this kowtowing to a demographic that is barely even a minority. They aren't even 1% of the population, yet we allow these activists to garner privileges and laws for them that they don't deserve. Why should we as a majority give them this privilege to ban people from speaking their minds about their group? Why should we also do the same thing for cis people? We should all be able to talk about each other in an open discussion. I'm sorry, but this is just wrong. It will breed the actual transphobia and resentment that these people constantly go on about, that society apparently holds towards them. Forgive me, but aside from some famous cases of trans people who have reached mainstream attention in the 20th century and last decade, nobody until recently ever cared about them. I've not seen anything on the level of the hatred that gay and bisexual men receive towards transsexuals. Do people who hold this hate exist? Yes, of course. Is it society-wide? Is it an issue that is so grave that it warrants removing people's rights? No. Now let us turn to these other allegations of harassment and defamation. She was called all these names like xenophobic and stuff like that. Well, we don't know if she is, and the papers haven't shown us anything that suggests that she did, but more on that later. Firstly, it is a biological fact that is not disputed by doctors and scientists with their qualifications and salt that we cannot, at this present moment in history, change a person's gender outright. We can change their physical makeup to some extent, we can do some cosmetic changes, but they will always be male or female. We cannot change their chromosomes yet. Until then, these people will always remain their biological sex. Fortunately, plenty of trans people who are not crazy socialists like Hayden understand this. Frozen Binary, a friend of the channel, is among those sensible trans women and men. But the progressive left wants to bend science and society into believing their pseudoscience that gender or biological sex is a social construct, that we can change biological sex and that these people are women or men, when it is not true. They are legally men and women and they can identify however they want. I don't care, honestly. Identify however you want. Just be aware of the biological fact. That's all. I know I have repeated myself here, but it's worth mentioning again that it's not defamation, at least that bit. I don't know about the other stuff. Scottow did not lie about Hayden in that regard. Even then, it is not, in my opinion, a lie that is damaging, even if it was a lie. Slander and defamation are called that because they cause damage to people. Also, this targeted harassment, well, first, the police have found no evidence yet and haven't charged her as of yet either. There was this trans activist anarchist on Twitter called Alice Good who claims to have evidence that Scottow was doing this targeted harassment. But as you can clearly see, she is showing what is an anonymous account that could be literally anyone. I have desperately searched for an outlet or anybody that has managed to find an actual link between the two and came up with naught. So either Good is mistaken or jumping on a media bandwagon to attack this woman for her agenda. I do not know, and I will wait for further evidence. Ironic, considering that these are the same people who will defend a person like Lorelei Bailey. Looking at you, Peter Coffin. So for those SJWs, I say, watch your tongue. If it gets out that she did not commit targeted harassment and this account is not Mrs. Scottow, you could actually be liable for criminal charges. So yeah, watch yourselves. I literally could go on and on about this case, but it's still ongoing and, to be honest, it's getting desperate over here. All we can do is continue fighting. So until next time, it's been your boy, and I'll see you later.